Here's the working theory. Republican Jeb Bush has two big obstacles to deal with in getting the brass ring. He's got his brother's record, and he just made a bold stand on that front that we're going to tell you about. And he's got his brother's henchman, Karl Rove, to deal with. Will bad blood keep him from the GOP brass ring?
Joining us now is CNN political commentator and host of the Ben Ferguson Show, Ben Ferguson, and former senior advisor to President Bill Clinton, Democratic strategist Richard Socarides. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. What do Karl Rove and Jeb Bush have against each other?
They have two different teams, two different mindsets, two different groups of people, and Karl Rove's been to the big dance. Jeb Bush wants to get there. They're not that tight. Not surprising. I mean, most people have their own team that get them there. If you look at even when George Bush ran, he had a very small team, a tight team from Texas. People thought he should bring in the big dogs, and he didn't, and it worked for him. And I think that there is this idea that, well, you should need me, or, if you don't listen to everything I tell you, we already got there once before, we're not friends, or there's some sort of disrespect. I think that's just politics.
So a little bit of it grows out of the relationship that Rove had with the brother and Jeb and George, and how did he get in the middle? And that's going to be political intrigue, and he'll have to deal with that on one level. He also has the record. So now Jeb Bush comes out and says, I see where my brother was on the Iraq War. I support it. What does that mean to your side of the fence?
Well, I think it's remarkable that Jeb Bush today, knowing everything we know about the false intelligence we had and that the false premise that that whole war was based on, would come out today and say that if he had it to do all over again, even today, even knowing what we know today, that he would make the same decision. I mean, like nobody thinks that. So this is another big problem for Jeb Bush. I mean, he's off to a very rocky start. In the first place, he's running as a moderate in an increasingly conservative party, a factionalized, increasingly conservative party, and now he's making these missteps.
So many conservatives that I talked to did not take what he said that way at all.
How did they take it?
I think they thought if you were in the position and you were president at the time.
No, that wasn't the question.
But I think the way that he responded, a lot of people thought he was saying, look, I would have done the exact same thing as my brother.
Sure, but the question was knowing what we know today. And he said he would do the same thing. I mean, that's why he got into trouble. Because
Sure, but I think you'll see a clarification from him probably. I think his point was, if I was there at the time and I saw the intelligence, because when he responded and said Hillary Clinton voted for it, I think he was talking about in the moment when they had what they had. I think a lot of people make that a bigger deal than it really is. And even when he said, if you think I'm going to run away from my brother on this one, people would keep waiting for there to be this big divide. He's saying it's not going to be on this issue at that time based on the info.
Not only is he not running away from his brother, I mean, he's using his brother as a policy advisor.
I mean, that's exactly the point, right? I mean, Ben is making the point.
What's
the point
he supposed
is
to say? I don't talk to my brother.
But the point is that here's a guy who's running for president. His whole reason for being electable, right, is that he's experienced, he's steady, he's supposed to be the mature, smart guy in the field, but he's making all these missteps.
How is that a misstep?
It was a misstep because if you believe what Ben says, I mean, he got asked a very clear question by Megyn Kelly, and he gave a very clear answer. Now he's having to go back and clarify it. I mean, there are all kinds of these things that he's experienced. That speech that he gave at Liberty last weekend, he looked very tentative. I mean, he just does not look like someone who's in the zone.
Obviously, he's not going for you as a voter. I didn't think he looked tentative at all. And I think what he was talking about when he was talking about foreign policy, his brother, the more that we've seen the rise of ISIS and Islamic extremism and the fall of Iraq and many other areas that are important in the Middle East and instability, George Bush's foreign policy to many conservatives is starting to look like he actually knew a lot more than what people gave him credit for. He said, if you pull out too early, if we don't have stability there, if we get out too quick, if we just try to end these wars, that all of a sudden it's going to be over. I think now, by him saying, I would listen to my brother and talk to him, he knew a lot, and honestly, the longer it gets away from him leaving office, the more he looks like he knew he was talking about foreign policy in the Middle East with the rise of ISIS.
I mean, though, of course, many Democrats believe that he's the one that upset the apple cart.
Sure,
it was George W. Bush.
And that's going to be a huge debate in the general.
Let's talk about somebody a group that he is going for, and that is Hispanics.
Yes.
So he also tried to clarify his policy on immigration, and he said that he would overturn President Obama's executive order on immigration, meaning, I think, send the dreamers back, send them home. And he's saying that he wants immigration reform as a whole, but he hasn't spelled that out.
I think he's trying to have it both ways on immigration, right? He's trying to suggest that he would institute some very modest immigration reforms, but he is not for a pathway to citizenship. He made that clear last night, if you watch the whole interview. And I think this is going to be a big issue. The Democrats and Hillary Clinton are the only. Hillary Clinton is the only, viable candidate now running who supports a pathway to citizenship.
But
That's
I
going to
think-
be
I
a
think
big
Jed's
issue.
point
You've
was
got
this.
it. You can't win
You
without the
don't-
Latino
but
vote.
you don't do it through executive action. I think that was part of what he was saying is if I'm President of the United States of America and you have to reform the immigration system, you don't do it because you don't get your way through executive action at the White House. And I would do it differently, and I would consult with Congress. And I think that's a very big point for conservatives.
You think he has a word choice issue? Do you think he's having some struggles
I think-
delineating his positions with the questions he's being asked? Because he seems to be falling in some holes, which you're able to explain pretty well, I think. But he shouldn't need that explanation at this level of the game. should
I
he?
mean, part of it is just when you're running for office and you're in these situations, people are going to try to get things that make you look like you're somehow different or unique or you're not on point. When I listen to him, and I think when
The
most
Fox question wasn't a
but what
sneaky
I'll say
question,
is,
and it was coming
if
from
you
a
look
safe
at, but
harbor.
what I'm saying is, if you look at conservatives, no one was shocked by that. Like when I look at the people that he's actually going to have to get to vote for him in the primary. These were not big issues then. They were big issues to people, I think, on the left, understandably so, because they feel like they can score points. But from Jeb Bush's perspective, I don't think he lost anybody over the last 2 or 3 days or these interviews.
All right, Ben Ferguson, Richard Socarides, thanks so much. Great to have you debating here on New Day.
Big news in politics this morning, but there are a lot of headlines.